Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and following the 3 H's of the channel. In this video, it's all about my country of Canada. And in this video, we feature the provinces of Newfoundland, Saskatchewan, and somewhere in the Canadian Rockies. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump with me and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. So I've posted this story on the internet before, but here it goes. In 2005, it was early April, I was in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. I decided to camp in a campground this time that was surrounded by a 5-foot bear fence, since this is grizzly country. Since it was April, the campground was generally empty, except for a very nice camper that was way on the other side of the lot. The first night was uneventful, as a lot of these stories start. It was ridiculously cold, but uneventful. The second night was when I was woken up around 11 p.m. or so to, what the hell is that noise? About 12 inches outside my tent, directly next to my head, is a hoof, falling and dropping, not stamping or doing anything else, just falling and dropping. I grew terrified after a few minutes, especially after I began to feel eyes staring down at me through the tent. I lit all my candles and my flashlight and prayed. The thing was there for hours. I woke up a few times during the night to it still right outside my tent, watching, feeling its eyes. The third night, though, was worse. So the noise stopped at about 40 minutes before dawn. After another hour or two, I got up the courage to go outside my tent. There was nothing. There were no tracks, but there was a small path behind my tent, and even when I tried to find tracks, the ground was frozen and hard, so I couldn't see them if I wanted to. Now, I've had some other weird events in my life that I won't get into in this particular story, but it made me brave enough to stay that last night. So that night, I went to bed. I was more worried this time, but I was more worried about freezing to death than whatever that hoofed prick was. That night, I was woken up again. It was a light drizzle outside. It was still very cold, but not as cold as it had been the previous 2 nights. I hear the hoof again, but this time, there's a little more force, and this time, there's a second one. Both of these things were outside my tent, still roughly a foot from my skull, and now there are 2 things with hooves. I can feel their eyes, and their hooves weren't falling rhythmically. I could tell they weren't from the same beast. I was filled with absolute fear. I felt that they wanted me to know that they could really ruin my shit. I wanted me to know that. Whatever was outside wanted me to know that they could just kill me if they wanted to. I lit my candles again. This time, a tall Catholic candle of St. Judas, the patron saint of lost causes. And this time, through the candlelight, I could see their shadows outside my tent. They were still just feeling like they were staring at me, right through my tent, like it didn't matter that there was no light, that they could just see me. With the candle lit, I knew they could, but I didn't care. I waited and prayed and tried to sleep. Eventually, after hours, my mind shut down and I awoke to dawn. When I left my tent, there was a huge log, the kind you use to put fire on while cutting it, about 5 feet in front of my tent entrance. I left all my gear and hightailed it out of there. I came back 2 days later to get my stuff, but nothing was destroyed. When I left my gear, I asked the ranger at the front if they had ever had deer or moose come through on the grounds. He said they didn't, as per the bear fence. I told him what happened to me. He chuckled and made a joke, saying maybe it was the witch. What the hell? It was May 3rd, 2008, I'm pretty sure. It was about 2 in the morning. I was at my fiance's mom's farm near Kisby in southeast Saskatchewan. I was out late with a buddy Sitting on the deck, it was nice, warm, and a clear night. A good night to just sit back and look at the stars while we talked about our alien theories and whatnot. Anyways, at around 2 o'clock, we noticed a set of lights out in the field behind the house. They were about 600 or 700 yards away and very low to the ground from what we could see. We stared at them for about 10 minutes trying to figure out what they were. They appeared to be moving in a circular motion and flashing in a pattern from left to right. We decided to get a better view, so we walked up to a nearby hill. We crouched down, and when we did, all of the other lights around faded out of sight except for the rotating ones. At first, we thought it was a semi on a dirt road, but it just sat there and was far too long to be a semi-truck at such a far distance. So we decided to walk back to the house. As we got back onto the deck, we saw a bright flash of light shoot off into the sky. The light looked like it came from the object in the field. The light kinda looked like a flare, but it was in the shape of what looked like Pac-Man, and it only lasted a few seconds and then faded out at about the time that we started to hear things snapping in the trees all around the house and what sounded like footsteps in the tall grass. We went inside and grabbed a flashlight. When we came back outside, we walked close to the tree line, looking for whatever was in the bushes. And then, out of nowhere, our flashlight died. But we kept going. I didn't want to, but I didn't want to seem like a baby in front of my buddy anyways. Every time that we got close to the tree line, we would hear a sound on the opposite side of us. When we went towards the sound, it would move to another part of the tree line, almost like there were multiple creatures in the bush, and they would make noise anytime we got close to one so that we couldn't see it. We did this for about half an hour. By the time we got back to the deck, it was now almost 3:30 a.m. We were already scared. My buddy came up with a little test to see if we were alone. He's very smart and clever in his mind, but what he would do is yell out, "If you can understand me, snap a twig." And sure enough, we heard a loud snap come from the trees. I jumped and said a few bad words. Then we decided to try another test. We went to one side of the yard and ran to the other side. As we did, we heard something crashing through the bushes toward us, as if it was eager to follow us, but stayed in the bushes. We were so scared that mid-run, we turned on a dime and ran toward the house in fear. We went back onto the deck and sat for a minute to catch our breath and analyze in our heads what we just heard. After a few minutes, we decided to walk down the ramp behind the house that eventually led all the way around the house and to the driveway. As we got to the corner of the house, we saw something standing in the driveway. We couldn't see its face, but it just stood there. We stared at it for about 30 seconds or so when we heard a low whine noise come from behind us. We turned to look, but found nothing. When we went to look back to see the creature standing in the driveway, it was gone. The creature was about 6'3" or so. It had long arms and a very round head, but had no clothing from what we could see. Anyways, as I was saying, I was scared. I really wanted to go inside. My buddy finally agreed, so we decided to go inside. It may sound dumb now, but at the time we were both scared. We kept staring at the driveway and were walking backwards toward the house, when out of nowhere, we heard what sounded like a loud gust of wind that slammed into a bush near the front door, right up against the house, and it was loud. I did a full 180 jump. When we looked at the bush, it was pretty much pressed up against the house. I was shaking so bad I had to sit down. When I was on the ground, my buddy was standing in front of me, talking to me, trying to calm me down. As I looked up at him, I saw a large black shadow on the roof looking down at us. I told him to look. It darted away really fast. I got up and we ran to the back of the house to see what was there, but there was nothing by that time. We did notice a large object in the shape of a triangle move across the sky above the house. It had 3 lights on it, one in each corner, but there was no sound. But there was a slight vibration in the ground, but still no sound. It moved very slow, about 10 miles an hour, when all of a sudden a bright light illuminated the yard, and it sped off, heading south at an incredible speed, and then it was gone. A strong sulfur smell filled the air. In total shock, we went inside and down to my buddy's room so that we could regroup and get our minds straight so we could figure out what just happened. We didn't sleep for the rest of the night. We were too scared. About 3 nights later, my buddy woke up, gasping for air, and it was loud enough to wake me up as well, and I was in another room. I went to see if he was okay. He said that he couldn't remember the dream, but he felt like that something was standing on his chest. And then once again, the strong sulfur smell filled the room, but only for about 2 minutes. After that, for about 3 weeks, we all had really intense, weird dreams, and constantly smelled sulfur, and saw weird lights in the sky almost every night. I had one dream that was exactly the same for 2 nights in a row. I dreamed that I was abducted and taken to a strange place where I was stuck with a needle-like object in the corner of my eye. I couldn't speak or scream or move, and then everything would go black and I'd wake up. When I would wake up, it would be morning, but I'd felt like that I only slept for a few minutes. To this day, we still see strange lights in the sky. Others have witnessed it as well, but I will never forget that night, ever. It was the most frightening thing that I had ever gone through. As with many things that terrify us and cause us to question ourselves or the reality around us, I tend to keep this close to the chest, quiet and buried, where I put the things I hope to forget. A bit of background. I grew up in a large city in eastern Canada. The whole of my life at that point had been spent around noise and light, traffic, and tides of people. It made the concept of quiet solitude very appealing, and I'd learned to seek these things out and appreciate them whenever I could. So when the opportunity arose to visit my parents' home, I took it. This is because they grew up in the far eastern part of Canada, in Newfoundland, and not even from the quote big city there, but from a small town. One of those towns you can see almost all of by standing on the biggest street within it. A remote part of a remote island in the remote country seemed like gold to me, especially at that time in my life. I was in my early 20s. I took off straight out of college, aimed at a career, intent on making my mark. But the city I was in wasn't particularly accepting of my skills or the language I spoke, so finding work was difficult and depressing. I gamed a lot more than I should have. I ate more. I drank more. Everyone thought that it was a good idea for a change of pace, healthy even. Of the trip, I will only describe our descent, for it is the most opportune use of the word I will ever know. If you've never been in a small plane at night, flying above a sea of clouds during a full moon, then you are missing one of the few plane-based pleasures available to people in the modern age. It's magical. The sky looked like wet black tarmac and headlights, so many stars. There seemed to be more than the sky could hold. Hovering in the middle of them was this spotlight of a moon, almost too bright to look at. These things together lit the rolling clouds beneath the plane. It looked like pillow stuffing, spread out horizon to horizon, all cast in a silver blue light. It felt like I could walk on it, like it was only a few feet below the fuselage. It moved and breathed and changed as we flew over it. It really is a perfect memory. And then we dove down, through that perfection, into darkness. We arrived at a small airport outside of their hometown. We could have driven from St. John's, but elected not to. Overnight driving in Newfoundland is perilous for those not accustomed to small roads and wildlife that still remains mostly wild. If your car hits a moose going at 60, the moose won't be the thing that gets scraped off the road. We still had some driving to do though. Their hometown was not where we would be staying, but at the been in the family for years cabin, about 30 minutes away in the woods. My lifestyle back on the mainland, fueled by disappointment and depression, had given me two things I couldn't shake when I landed: a desire to be outside and a completely messed up internal clock. I was so used to playing Ultima Online until 4 a.m. every night that 2 a.m. felt pretty early. So when my parents went to bed, I let them know that I was going for a walk. They understood, and Newfoundland is not known for having violent crimes in the woods, so there was no real concern. I took a flashlight and a walking stick, mostly to avoid turning an ankle and for swatting away the unwanted attention from local animals. Not that a broomstick, literally, would do much against an aggressive animal, but if you've ever gone walking anywhere not fully tamed, it just feels good to have something solid in your hands. So off I went. Now, ever since our descent, I'd been concerned. The general sense of tension, I attributed it to a new place, no creature comforts, except some books and a lack of computers. Maybe it was just the absence of that amazing scene above the clouds. Whatever it was, that feeling ratcheted up several levels just a few minutes from the house. I shelved it. I figured I'd acclimate shortly, and this was a clearly defined walking path that I knew circled around the small lake next to the cabin and would bring me right back there in a couple of kilometers. Probably a 45-minute walk if I kept at a good pace, an hour if it was a bit more casual. The whole way around, I would be able to see the cabin, so I wouldn't lose my orientation. All in all, I'm trying to say I had my bases covered. I even had light, as the moon I had seen earlier was still overhead, poking out from the overcast sky regularly enough to see. The clouds were fast, as they can be when you're so close to the sea. So I'm walking down the path, woods to my right, thick, impenetrable pine, and to my left, the small lake, lit like glossy black frosted glass from the wind and the moon. Solo walks are great for thinking, so I let my mind wander. The path was well kept, and the stick and flashlight were utterly unnecessary. At some indeterminate point in the walk, I felt someone walk over my grave. You know the feeling, those slow chills, when you can feel the wave of goosebumps appear, flowing up your back, neck, forearms, and everything goes tight. I realized I was staring at the lake, at the white noise of the reflected light, and not paying attention to the woods. I became irrationally certain that something terrible was in the woods. I flicked on my flashlight as I turned to look, and it was just like sinking in a hot tub. The goosebumps vanished, and the woods seemed utterly unremarkable, mollified, and I continued walking. Then it happened again. Exactly the same feeling. Once again, I realized that I was absent-mindedly staring at the lake, wondering if my house was going to go to iDoc and Ultima Online. I remember that specifically. At this point, I noticed the cabin almost directly across from me beyond the lake. I am about as far as I'm going to get from the house during my walk, and all I want is to be back there with one of my books. As this thought crosses my mind, I notice that a small part of the reflection of the lake is missing. It's just gone, like someone went over it with a Sharpie. So I look at that spot. I focus on it. Of all the bad decisions in my life, that's the one I wish to take back the most, even while my human brain is trying to assign some reason for this absence of the reflection. Half-sunk boat, a thicket of reeds, some weird stone outcropping. My lizard brain is telling me to back off as fast as I can. The spot is getting bigger. It is something, man-shaped, walking out of the water toward me, very clearly walking, backlit by the moon. I'm frozen. I can't move. It's getting close to shore when I realize I still have a flashlight, one of the big ones people in cabins like to keep around. I drop my stick, fumble with the flashlight, not breaking eye contact with this thing. I find the switch and shine it at this man shape. Of course, there's nothing there at all. Just water and moonlight reflections all the way back to the cabin. I swear I stood there for 5 minutes, motionless, except for my eyes, which were grid searching the entire lake. Finally, I decide that I'm just imagining things, despite every inch of me still screaming to run. I decide that I will head back the way I came at double speed. I flick the light off to get my night sight back, and this thing has returned, and it's exactly where it would have been if it hadn't stopped approaching, right where I had been pointing my light, close enough now to start obscuring part of the cabin, literally visible in the dark, but not in the light. I froze for some amount of time, probably only a few seconds, but it felt like a lot longer. It got closer. Lake water moves noisily but regularly. You watch reflection on it, and it's just noise. There are no regular waves or anything. It's just a constant shimmer type thing. The edges of this thing were exactly like that. It's hard to notice at first, because just the lake was behind my view of it, but as it eclipsed the cabin and some of the ground, I very clearly saw its edges move just like the lake. Some people have said scribbles, some have said static. I feel like these are synonymous descriptions of what I saw. About 10 feet, I realized there wasn't going to be any kind of stopping. It wasn't going to stop and say something. I dropped the flashlight, I heard it break, and I sprinted back to the cabin. I fell once, skinning my shin pretty roughly, but made it back to the cabin in about 10 minutes. I wasn't in good shape at the time. I get back to the house. My head is pounding, my ears roaring. I'm nauseous. I stumble in and collapse into the downstairs bedroom. It's a 2-floor cabin. My parents are upstairs. They are undisturbed by my noisiness, and I collapse into bed. And then I notice my one window is framing the lake like a painting. Everything just outside the window is pitch black. The moon is on the other side of the house. I decide I can't deal with that, so I go back out to the main room and close all the doors and windows that I can see, and I sleep, or try to, on the sofa. At some point, hours later, crashing from adrenaline and the run, I fall asleep. The next morning, my parents woke me up coming downstairs. They ask me why I'm sleeping on the couch, fully clothed, and why my jeans are torn. I'm too self-conscious at this point to say anything close to the truth, so I just say I fell, lost the flashlight, and had to come back, and I just fell asleep on the couch by mistake. They bought it. I didn't sleep well, or much, at all, so I decided to go to my actual bed and get some actual sleep. I walk over and open the door to my room, and lying perfectly aligned on the bed is the broken flashlight covered in dirt, and the broomstick, side by side, like matchsticks. The window was still locked. So those were all very strange, weren't they? If one of them stuck out to you in particular, let me know which one it was down in the comments. And as I always say, if you have a story that you want to send into the channel, you can email it to me at the email in the description, and I'll try to get back to you. And if you would like to donate to the channel, I have an email. Yep. If you would like to donate to the channel, I have a PayPal and a Patreon in the description as well. And here on YouTube are super thanks and memberships. And, as always, just watching the video, commenting, favoriting, sharing, and all that free stuff is very helpful for the channel too. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will subscribe, and make sure to like the video, tick the notification bell, and all that stuff that everybody else tells you to do as well. And I will see you in the next one. I hope you enjoyed the videos this week, and as always, thank you for pulling up a stump with me, and thank you for watching. Have a good week.